Hi, I'm Peter Roper. This is another serving of Potluck Politics. Thank you for watching. Today, before we go any further, I just want to state that Tuesday, November 8th is Election Day, so the midterms are here. Remember, the absentee voting is somewhat easier now in Connecticut. If you can't get to the polls or if you have COVID concerns, you can get an absentee ballot and do it from home. And don't forget to support this year's ballot question on expanding voting days. That's really important. If you need information on these issues or candidates who appear on your ballot, check out Vote 411, the League of Women Voters website, a great resource. We're really fortunate to have Aundre Bumgardner today, Democratic candidate for the new 41st House District, which includes parts of Groton and Stonington. And thank you for coming. Why don't you describe your district, because it has changed since the 41st when you won last time.
Significantly. And again, Peter, it's great to be with you. And this is, I believe, my first time on Potluck Politics. So very exciting to be here. And thank you again to both you and Terri for the invitation to participate. The 41st District has changed significantly. What used to be a Groton-based district from the city of Groton to Mystic also included the southern third of New London from pretty much the hospital down to Ocean Beach. It is no longer the case. New London is no longer a part of the district. It's now a part of the 40th District, currently represented by Chris Conley. Now, the newest portion of the district is Stonington, the southwestern corner of Stonington, from Mystic all the way to Stonington Borough. So if you live on the Stonington side of Mystic, Mason's Island, Latimer Point, Lord's Point, or Stonington Borough, and some of the more inland wooded areas south of 95, you are now part of the 41st House District. So over the last few months, I've gone door to door to meet folks in Stonington. I'm very much familiar with Stonington, as you know, it's been our neighboring community. Yeah. But it is, in so many ways, I think the issues of concern, especially as surrounding environmental quality, surrounding the importance of having great K through 12 schools. Those are issues that still resonate amongst the Stonington voter population. Mm-hmm. So I've had a lot of fun going door to door in Stonington over the last few months, getting to know folks, and over the last few weeks I've spent quite a bit of time on the home turf here in Groton to talk to folks. But we now have share a House District with Stonington, just as we do with the 18th Senatorial District. Mm-hmm. And I'm very eager and excited to continue to learn their issues and hopefully have the opportunity to represent them come January of next year.
Great. You were a guest on Joe De La Cruz's show, Born Political, back in the spring. And people can go there, find it on YouTube, and find out a little bit about your very early years. We're going to start with 2014, when you were first elected to the legislature at the age of 20, young man at 20. The youngest representative in Connecticut history, as a matter of fact, so that's amazing. You represented the original 41st until Joe won that seat in 2016. Then you were elected to the Groton Town Council in 2018, and you're still on the Groton Town Council, and you're also serving on the City of Groton Planning and Zoning Commission as well. You're obviously very young when you first went to the legislature. What have you learned in the last 8 or so years that you can use this time around?
Yeah, so I think you hit the nail on the head as far as the local service. I am so fortunate to have had the opportunity to represent the entire town of Groton on the Groton Town Council the last 5 years. And I'll be honest with you, when I first got elected, it was, kind of starry-eyed, very excited and rambunctious and ready to serve. But I did take the opportunity to listen and take in as much information as I could up in Hartford. Obviously, there's a lot of moving parts to how the sausage is made in the legislature, and how, the importance of developing relationships so your legislation has a chance of passing. But I did not have any local experience prior to serving in the legislature, and I think that was one of my weaknesses in those 2 years. And so since then, obviously, been on the council the last 5 years, and just wrapped up serving on the Groton City Planning and Zoning Commission. Served there for about almost 6 years. And that experience has been invaluable, especially in the last few years on the town council, where we've deliberated on very significant issues, especially as it relates to housing issues and some of the issues we've seen with Branford Manor in particular in the city of Groton, certainly as it relates to data centers, the Mystic Oral School, issues that have been kind of front and center, not just in the day newspaper, but have even gotten coverage at the, by the Hartford Courant because of the fact that the state of Connecticut is involved in a lot of these key decisions. So having had state experience has provided, I think, great insights when deliberating on issues at the local level, and I am so appreciative of again that local service. It's invaluable. I always tell folks, if you ever have a chance to serve on your local boards or commissions, you ought to do it, because you learn so much about your community and develop relationships with your neighbors who are thankless volunteers, and the work is thankless. You're certainly not getting paid to do sit through meetings that in some cases end at 11 p.m. or even midnight. But it is so rewarding, because at the end of the day, at the local level, you can get so much done, and I believe we have over the last few years, and hope to continue that service up in Hartford.
Yeah, I was on the Planning Commission in Groton for 24 years, and it was a good experience. It's not a place to make friends necessarily,
not always.
If you're concerned about issues, but it's good for the community and for yourself. Okay, you started out as a Republican, and you were a Republican when you were in the legislature. Why did you become a Democrat?
Absolutely.
And congratulations.
Yes, thank you, thank you. So yes, indeed, I was elected to the House as a Republican. I, was in the unique position of being, at the time it was a Democratic seat, and so represented a Republican pickup. But at the 41st district historically has been a very blue seat. And I did not win because of because I was a conservative or any. I think you can certainly attest that I've always been socially progressive and fiscally, perhaps more moderate. But as far as social issues go, uncompromising when it pertains to the woman's right to an abortion, protecting reproductive rights, marriage equality, and a host of other issues. So even as a Republican, I was very outspoken about those issues, and even to the dismay of many Republicans and conservatives who felt I was insufficiently Republican. But obviously, in 2016, our whole world changed. I was running for re-election against my good friend Joe Dela Cruz, who ironically 2 years later I had the privilege of serving as his campaign treasurer. But I was running for re-election the same year Donald Trump was on the ballot, and I was asked by the Day editorial board, "Do you support your Republican nominee for president, or Donald Trump?" And I emphatically stated no. And again, to the dismay of many Republicans locally, who when I went in to vote at the voting booth, would say, "I can't vote for you. You don't stand with our nominee." And I said, "Look, I wear that as a badge of honor, and so if I lose that way, at least I can lose with my head held high and with integrity." And to answer your question more directly, what pushed me over the edge was certainly in 2017 the events that transpired in Charlottesville, where white supremacists descended upon the campus and really desecrated the community and there were lives lost, and it just was, there were no words, but was obviously our, at the time, President Trump, stood by those rioters.
They're good people.
They were good. Right. They're good people.
Yeah.
Some of them are good people, and that was a line that was just too far. And so the following day, I changed my party registration to the Democrats, and I haven't looked back. I don't always agree with I consider myself a pragmatic progressive, and I don't always agree with every Democrat, right? And I'm sure you don't always agree with every Democrat, but I think the beauty of the Democratic Party.
I sometimes agree with Republicans.
Exactly, that's right. But it's a Big Tent party, and I think everyone is welcomed, as long as you are somebody who believes in equality, somebody who believes in fairness, equity, and I've been. I'm again not looking back, and I feel at home with the Democratic Party.
And I think you're sharing a position with President Biden, who mentions that event as something important to his deciding to run and basically reviving the soul of America. So you're on good ground. I'd hope maybe I'd talk to you out of being a Republican, because I remember we talked, I think at one time, you were an environmentalist, and I said, how can you be a Republican as an environmentalist? It must be pretty hard. You should be a Democrat. So I'm glad you came around. So again, how do you think being on the town council will help you in the legislature?
Well, first and foremost, I'm very familiar with the issues of most significant concern right now in the town of Croton because of that service. Case in point, some of the issues we're finding with Mystic Oral School obviously very much impacts the Mystic community. When I go door to door in your neighborhood, every other door, it's brought up. What's going on with Oral School? And now, obviously, with the very welcome news that Governor Lamont will be terminating the purchase and sales agreement for Ressler. I mean, the fact that we even faced the possibility that it could be sold to Jeffrey Ressler for $1. I mean, it was just downright inexcusable, and I'm so proud that we have a governor.
I understand the theory is that they have to clean up the site, but there was no requirements for the things that he should do, so that to me was not right.
No, it wasn't, and again,
I was glad Lamont
absolutely
stepped up.
He did, and time and time again, the governor has stepped up. I'm supporting the governor. I always joke I have Susan Bysowitz on our Lieutenant Governor Susan Bysowitz on speed dial.
Great.
There hasn't been a time
She's
where I
been
haven't
to
called
Groton
her.
a lot. She has here over the years. She's been to town committee events numerous times.
Absolutely.
So she knows where we are. That's good.
Yes, and they're a dynamic duo. They've done great work for our state, and obviously, and after hearing Governor Lamont speak at the editorial board with the Day this past late last week, it was abundantly clear that he has a very strong grasp of the issues locally as well, of local concerns. So. Just again, the town council, we're deliberating on issues pertaining to housing, especially with Branford Manor, dealing with mold issues at the homes, and we currently have a tax stabilization agreement with Branford, and that may be up for discussion in the coming weeks because of the fact that these issues have remained unabated for some time. Short-term rentals, for example, that's an issue that has been discussed at length at the legislative level, and obviously an issue of significance in both Groton and Stonington, especially within the greater Mystic area. And so I'm well versed on these issues because we've talked about them extensively in on the council, and certainly, I don't want to knock my opponents. I do have two opponents in the race. A Republican and a unaffiliated petitioning candidate. But I have more local experience than both of them combined. In fact, neither of them have been elected at all to local office. And so, I did not have any experience, obviously, when I first got elected to the legislature. But again, I think that local experience is critical.
The quality is not the same.
Exactly.
I like your platform, the 5 E's. Could you talk about what those are and how you came up with those?
Yes, thank you. The 5 E's. We'll start with economic recovery, followed by educational excellence, energy affordability, environmental quality and ethics reform. 5 issues that I think very much resonate with.
I'm going to add electability on there.
Electability
is the 6th.
Yes, we can add a 7th.
You won't argue
Enthusiasm,
with that.
right?
You won't argue with that, right?
Yes. But again, 5 issues that very much resonate with voters almost every year. By virtue of running for office or helping others, I tend to, see folks every year at their doorstep. Again, those are the 5 issues historically in the almost 10 years I've been involved in local politics that are front and center, and come up for discussion. Specifically on ethics reform, for example, I think whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, if you, do not espouse, high ethics, then you ought not to be involved in local politics or public service, and I think that's a given. But even Lieutenant Governor, a couple days ago, she formally endorsed our candidacy, and she highlighted the importance of ethics reform as a reasoning for endorsement. And I think that there's an opportunity at the legislative level to work even in a bipartisan manner to right some of the wrongs right some of the wrongs from the past. I think case in point, State Pier. It was recently announced that the FBI has opened a criminal investigation in some of the inner workings of the Connecticut Port Authority. And I don't care if you're a Republican or a Democrat, but if the FBI is looking into something.
There's some problems.
Absolutely, and I think we have an obligation as a legislature to course correct that and ensure that these things don't happen again. In 2017, there was a bipartisan budget that then Governor Daniel Malloy signed into law. At the time, there was more parity between the legislature and the Senate. It was tied 18-18, so it really forced everyone to kind of have to work together.
Yeah.
But while there is, I think, very positive reforms that came from that budget, as far as our getting our fiscal house in order, they did eliminate, I think, a very important committee that used to. It was a bipartisan committee. It was called the Program Review and Investigations Oversight Committee, and they worked in a bipartisan fashion. Actually, there was equal number of Republicans to Democrats on that committee, and they reviewed programs within the state and made recommendations as to how to improve them or streamline or create efficiencies. But I think that if the state were to bring that back, that would be a great committee to take a look at kind of providing reforms to the Connecticut Port Authority, providing reforms to, for example, a oversight group that it's called the State Contractors Contracting Review Board. And so I'd like to see that committee come back, and I will be submitting legislation to bring back that committee. I believe actually at one point even my predecessor, Elisa Wright, served on that committee. And so it was, and she did great work on that committee, and I think it would be a value to see that through. So that's one kind of tenet of our ethics reform, is focusing on that. And
we call this potluck politics, but it's really about good government.
Yes.
We know the political part is important, but the government part is the most important.
Absolutely.
Making it work for people.
Absolutely.
It looks like climate is one of your big issues.
Yes.
And that's why we've had a bond over the years, because that's always been one of my issues too. You want to talk anything specific about that, or?
Yes, absolutely. It selfishly.
We're using up our time, so.
Selfishly, no, it's okay. Selfishly, it may be my favorite E, environmental quality.
I gathered that.
We live obviously in a coastal community, and we are very vulnerable to extreme weather events that will become far more recurring should we don't take it. Should we as a community, as a state, as a nation, as a world, do not tackle our climate crisis. And both Groton and Stonington, many neighborhoods will be subjected to 20-inch sea level rise by 2050. And I would argue that most of those neighborhoods are inadequately prepared, for those impending storms. So I fundamentally believe that we need to revolutionize the way we, live in our society. We need to, and President Biden has been, so focused on this, and getting the Inflation Reduction Act passed, and thankfully, we have an amazing delegation, with Senator Blumenthal, who's on the ballot this November, and Senator Murphy, and obviously, Congressman Courtney supporting them.
It is a good state.
Absolutely, and not only that, but they have experience under their belts, and they have seniority, and serve on key committees where they can not only bring home the bacon, if you will, but are in a strong position to advocate on our behalf. So those federal dollars will be critical to to modernizing our grid, to transitioning our communities to having electric vehicles, and so we have to take advantage of these, this opportunity. And so there, at the local level, we need to start planning for, how we invest those dollars, and certainly, hardening our coastline, and in some cases where maybe hardening isn't appropriate, letting kind of wildlife take its course.
Some open space might be appropriate.
That's right. You hit the nail on the head. So again, I think it's critically important that we have a strong voice for our region up in Hartford on environmental issues. Should I be elected, I'd like to, again, serve on the Finance, Revenue, and Bonding Committee, which I served on previously, as well as the Transportation and Education Committee. But I'd like to serve on two new committees, specifically the Environment Committee and the Energy and Technology Committee, which has cognizance over, environmental issues, and certainly energy policy in our state. And I think by serving in those two committees, it would provide a great opportunity for Groton and Stonington to have a say on our future.
Great. So you talked a little bit about the oil school issue, which is
Yes.
pretty hot in this area.
Yes.
You want to talk a little bit about how you came to your position? Because I think initially the council
Yes.
all supported the
Absolutely.
idea.
Yes.
And I have to admit, when I first heard proposals, it sounded like they were heading in the right direction.
Yes.
But the specifics of the catcher.
Exactly, and I always say the devil's in the detail. And since then, I think what's so important is when you serve in office, you're not always right, and I think it's okay to admit when you've been wrong, or once you've had more information that you've not flip flop, but make an informed decision. And so we've done just that. Last year I started, especially on the council, really questioning the way the town has been dealing with Respler, and so, case in point, I fundamentally believe when we discuss Respler, the issues, with Respler homes, that we do so in an open and transparent manner, because in so many cases, when you've looked kind of historically on the issue the last couple of years, we've learned so much about the development agreement, and purchase and sales agreement, and the financial fitness of the developer, because of a very concerned citizenry that has done their homework, that has provided this information to the council, and it hasn't come from within our own town government. And so, as a elected official, I fundamentally understand the importance of leaning on an educated populace who, again, has done their homework and done their due diligence on key issues. And so even more recently, when we learned about the purchase and sales agreement for Buck from a concerned citizen who just happened to FOI. And so I think we need to be proactive, certainly as a town, as a community, as a state legislature, or as a state delegation on these issues. And I have great confidence that our town moving forward, as well as our elected leaders at the state level, and certainly very much welcome the opportunity to serve with Chris Conley, who's done an amazing job and worked I think really hasn't gotten the credit she deserves, working behind the scenes to right the ship.
She is amazing.
She is, and we're dear friends, but I have so much professional respect for her.
We feel
well.
like she's our rep too, because she's so good for Groton.
She is.
You did talk a little bit about State Pier. Anything else you'd like to add to that discussion? I think there are some major problems, and I'm hoping you're going to be looking into that.
Absolutely. I think there is also a lot of validity to the comment that there is, the pier was designed to accommodate a mix of uses. We saw at one point a fishing fleet and the salt operation, and there was cargo ships that would come in and out of the harbor.
Lumber came in there.
Lumber, absolutely. The importance of the freight rail line that hugs the Thames River, and I think we need to reincorporate some of those uses in the future. It cannot be a single-use pier. And so that I'd like that to be on the table. I do think ultimately we're going to have to go back to the drawing board. But most importantly, I do struggle with the fact that, for example, Eversource has been a partner, financial partner, to the state of Connecticut, or throughout this entire ordeal, and now they've announced that they're selling their share of the of their.
That's a concern.
Absolutely. So I think we ought to go back to the drawing board. I'm not opposed to, obviously not opposed to renewable energy. We don't have a choice, but I think it needs to be done in a manner where we're concerned about the siting of windmills as well. I've spoken to many scientists who share great concern about the type of windmills that will be installed in the ocean and the siting of them, the impact specifically on the blue whale, and they're impacting their migratory patterns. So if we obviously a key tenet of environmental justice is the commitment to renewable energy, but it cannot be done at the expense of other wildlife, flora and fauna in our in our Long Island Sound and certainly the Atlantic Ocean.
So you're doing a lot of door-to-door.
Yes. And
are you finding anybody arguing that the election was stolen last time? And what's your response?
Rarely. The beauty of elections is you have I speak to as many voters as I can, but you do have to kind of choose the path of the shortest resistance, if you will. And so I think what I've learned over the years that there are just certainly some voters that no matter how much you reason, they just simply will not vote for you because the D after your name. And so I spend the most time obviously talking to folks that I know I kind of have a fighting chance with. And I do love the challenge. I will never not talk to anyone, and obviously every vote is important. Every person who is a resident and citizen does have the ability to vote and would welcome everyone to exercise that right. But I certainly pick my battles at the doors because we have only so much time, and there are some folks who, no matter how much you try to convince, you may not get through. But right now I'm so focused on local issues. We're I think in many respects, even talking to folks of like mind, they're a bit tired of the kind of the national noise right now. And obviously we've run the gamut with some of the big hot button items at the local level, and there's certainly no shortage of those issues to work on.
Yeah. And you will be the representative of everybody in your district, I assume.
Always.
That's the trick of this. When the election's over, your job is government, and I have some confidence in you of doing that well. Any issues you want to mention? Final words. We're just about out of time.
Yes. No, I mean, Peter, it was a privilege being on this show. I can't believe we only have a month left of this election. I've so enjoyed talking to folks at their doorstep, and especially after COVID. I've noticed this year, for the first time since COVID, folks want to chat, and they like to take the time to chat. So we'll keep pushing until November 8th, and hope to earn the votes of folks living in the 41st district, but at bare minimum, just make sure you show up and exercise your right to vote. It's so important.
Absolutely. Your vote, it's your voice.
That's right.
I'm Peter Roper for Potluck Politics. Thank you, Aundre Bumgardner,
Thank you.
for running and for sharing your views with us. Thank you, viewers, for watching. Please support democracy. Vote Tuesday, November 8th, and be well.